So you want an S1000RR, you little squid. You want a bike with so much precision that the engineers over at BMW polished all the character right out of it because you're a cold and calculating robot who sees the little round badge and instinctively knows it's one of the finest experiences on two wheels. Or maybe you're the old guy at the track, you know the one I'm talking about, that old fogey in the old leathers, always shows up first and never seems to take a break because, well, you can rest when you're dead, am I right? Or maybe you're dipping your toes in the sport bike pool coming from one of the plethora of different riding experiences BMW offers, and no, they're not motorcycles, they're experiences because riding your GS down to the local coffee shop might as well be the road of bones for you in your highlighter yellow Aerostitch suit. I'm not sure why, but BMW's riders seem to all fall into the stereotype of presumed snobbery, which I assume is down to them being less popular motorcycles than your average Japanese bike, but not quite as esoteric or exclusive as a KTM or a Ducati. The S1000RR is an incredibly well-built machine, and I've had the chance to ride one a handful of times in a couple different generations, and while they might make you feel faster than Rossi, there's a cold and clinical feeling to these bikes that comes with the sheer amount of refinement that's gone into them. But I'm gonna get a little ahead of myself there. What's going on, you precious wee baby squid and squidettes? It is me, your real-life dad, Krabby Stooge, Fanny Nudes, Yammie Noob. See, I told you I was just gonna go get some milk and I would be right back. Didn't you believe me? Come on, don't look at me like that. Spite's only here to add a little diversity to the cast. Today we're gonna talk about the S1000RR if it's not already obvious, because despite my misgivings about it, it's an incredibly well-built machine capable of way more than mere mortals could possibly achieve. But the question is, how did we get here, and is the S1000RR as good as it's made out to be? Well, to answer that, we've put together this little buyer's guide going over the history, models, and some problems you might encounter so you can make the right call. But before we dive in, I'd like to take a second and thank today's sponsor, Twisted Road. For those of you who don't know, Twisted Road is a peer-to-peer motorcycle rental service that allows you to rent a motorcycle just about everywhere. Maybe if you're traveling for some work trip, but you still want to be that cool dude that shows up to the office smelling like exhaust and BO because it's 100 degrees outside, well, instead of renting a two-wheel drive 40 horsepower crap box, rent a bike. There's a ton to choose from, and since you're renting directly from riders, you don't have to deal with that surly rental car desk person. If you click the link down below, you'll get a free day of riding. I am an investor in the company because I really do believe in it, so take that, comment section skeptics. Once again, click that link down below and get started with a free day of riding through Twisted Road. Now, where exactly did the BMW S1000RR come from? The year is 2007. And if you wanted a sport bike, you'd wander down to your local dealership in your Crocs, ripped low-rise jeans, and choose between either a 600 or a big bad 1000cc Big 4 bike. And Honda was the king of the castle with their CBR 1000RR. Suzuki had made the baffling choice to move away from the legendary K5 engine, and Yamaha had not yet released the crossplane R1. The ZX-10R was a solid choice, but none of these bikes are truly different. Aprilia's RSV4 wasn't out yet, and the Ducati 1098R was there, but you weren't really seeing them out in the wild like the Big 4 bikes. That year, James Toseland had won the World Superbike Championship on a Honda, proving the Big 4 was where it was at. At the time, BMW was mostly about winning Dakar rallies, and they riding high on the successful long-way route adventure that shot the GS line to prominence. In an unexpected move, they announced that they would be competing in WSBK on a brand new motorcycle that no one had ever seen before. In April of 2008, BMW unveiled the S1000RR in Munich. In order to meet homologation requirements, they had to produce 1,000 bikes to be sold to the public. And this was the first time you could buy a sport bike from the German manufacturer. And when I say sport bike, I mean a true blue, high horsepower, crazy machine, not counting those big bad open touring kind of bikes they used to make. The 2009 S1000RR featured a 999cc that made 193 horsepower and 82 foot-pounds of torque and weighed in at 450 pounds wet. So how did the newcomer do in WSBK? Well, not great. Their top rider, Troy Corser, placed 13th, which is a little bit far from the podium. Overall, they took 6th and 7th, beating out Cowie, so hey, not last place, but not much better. So like any good German engineer, they went back to the drawing board and refined the bike. The crazy thing is that while they didn't place very high, there wasn't much need for refining. The S1000RR featured ABS, traction control, and was the first production motorcycle to feature a quick shifter. And even though they didn't exactly kill it in WSBK, everyone was pretty shocked when this thing came out. It made an absolute unbelievable amount of power and kind of wiped the floor with everybody else. In 2012, the S1000RR received a few changes, but these were more like smoothing over a rough edge rather than a grand sweeping change. The ram air was made larger for better air intake, the catalytic converters were built into the exhaust to save weight, and the front end was lifted by 4mm. To the average rider, these are the things you brag about if you're the kind of guy who has to prove he's got the best toys, but you're never really going to notice the difference. There were other minor tweaks here and there, but they didn't really change the bike much. In 2013, BMW made another handful of minor tweaks, but more effort was placed into the HP4, which is the more track-oriented version. But again, the changes were so minor as to be unworthy of mention, because who really cares about an electronically controlled interface, pipes, or acoustic valves, to be honest? Another year went by with no major changes. Then in 2015, the S1000RR was released, making 199 horsepower and 83.3 foot-pounds of torque, and weigh almost 9 pounds lighter. The electronics were updated to allow the rider to customize their experience. You could start to select the level of traction control, lift control, suspension dampening, and etc. Basically, if you wanted to be in dank nooner mode or nanny mode or some happy medium. But this was also when they swapped the sides of the iconic asymmetrical headlights that was either roaring applause or complete disdain. You legally couldn't be lukewarm about the lights, and that didn't end there. In 2017, the HP4 Race was released as a track-only variant of the bike and an extremely limited production of 750 units. The last major change happened to the S1000RR in 2019 with the introduction of the shiftcam technology and a whole new suite of changes for the bike, a new look, and all kinds of stuff. The bike also made 204 horsepower and 83 foot-pounds of torque and weighed another 9 pounds lighter. The new bike has a beautiful TFT display and will show you basically everything that is happening with the bike. And for the first time ever, a BMW motorcycle was blessed with an M package, which is the BMW speak for the high-dollar knickknacks that only a true BMW fan could appreciate. These included a special paint finish, carbon fiber wheels, a lightweight battery from the factory, a special chassis kit, an M Sport seat, and exclusive pro riding mode. Wow, you're really gonna show off your pro riding mode to your buddies at bike night because you're a pro. The final weight of the M package was down to the featherweight 427 pounds. For comparison, our R1 that we're giving away over on yammie.co weighs in at 441 pounds. Okay, now here's the thing. Imagine for a minute some wizened old craftsman working on a beautiful armoire. He spent months or maybe even years in his woodworking shop carefully sanding and shaping every single curve on this cabinet to the point where it transcends some mere IKEA brand mass-produced stuff, holding together a truly one-of-a-kind masterpiece, a work of art. The final product is incredible, but the process to get there is a bit boring. It's everyone but the most avid of carpenters. That's what the S1000RR is. It's a motorcycle that has spent over a decade being honed, tweaked, and refined to the point where there's not a single wasted nut or bolt, and not one thing doesn't serve a purpose. The S1000RR is a truly phenomenal motorcycle that makes an incredible amount of power and handles telepathically. I've ridden them both on track and in the street, and I can tell you it's perhaps one of the smoothest, most effortless riding experiences that you can imagine. But all that comes at a cost. You can't have all this groundbreaking technology, all this mechanical perfection, without it feeling cold and clinical. That's just the price of perfection. It's why I love motorcycles like the Desert Sled. It's loud, air-cooled V-twin, causes the whole bike to shake and wiggle when you crack open the throttle. It's an 80V bike with a wafer-thin skin plate, and yet it's perfectly happy to crack wheelies and hit jumps and do all that crazy stuff. It's the same reason why I love my Daytona 675R race bike. It's raw, it's analog, it feels real, it feels kind of weird and wonky in some ways, but it has character and soul. It's flaws that cause the better qualities of the bike to stand out more. All of this is a very poetic way of saying that when everything on the bike is perfect, nothing is. It simply works. It's stunning the first few times you see it, the first couple of times you ride it, it's incredible, but eventually that's all that's going to fade away and you're going to be stuck owning a technological marvel and not a beautiful motorcycle. And you want to know the craziest thing? BMW still hasn't won a World Superbike Championship. So now you know about the history of this bike and some of my thoughts on it. You can definitely check out some of my other videos where I've ridden and reviewed some of these bikes. They are very amazing to ride, but again, a little bit soulless. But let's say you still want to pick one of these up because you just want to tear up the track and you don't really care about feel and character and all this other stupid things that some Ducatista on the internet is telling you. Well, it's hard to go wrong with any of these bikes, but if you were to pick up one of the first S1000RRs, being from 2009 to 2011, according to rider forums, there was this weird issue on the right side switch cluster that it wouldn't work if you let it out in the sun, meaning that if you wanted to park the bike out in front of a restaurant, you better have it parked in the shade because it might not turn over. I've also seen reports of kickstand switches failing, which can be a problem, but most glaringly of all, there were a few reported front brake failures, which is a huge problem on a bike that fast. These did, however, seem to be isolated incidents. Then in 2015, all the reported issues were pedantic little things like aluminum triple clamps having sharp edges, no LED indicators on the American bikes, and the engine cooking the rider's feet on warmer days. These are also the year that the asymmetrical headlights were flopped over, so if you didn't like the look, you better run. As for the new Model S1000RRs, there have been some reported issues, mainly the machining of the crankcase starving the gearbox of oil. The story goes that there were 3 machines in Germany making these parts, and one of those 3 had an issue causing all parts that were made using this machine to be flawed. That means that theoretically 1 in 3 S1000RRs were cursed with this gearbox issue. The forum lore says that because of the massive release of the M package, BMW received way more orders than they anticipated, leading to huge shortages and delays in productions. This caused some parts to sneak through that might have otherwise been rejected. However, a more real issue, more widely reported, has to do with the throttle mapping, which restricted performance in all modes, including the exclusive Pro mode, resulting in a very noticeable lull between 5 and 7,000 RPM. Of course, any kind of ECU restriction is just a simple flash or tune away being solved, but it's an irritation, especially for those who bought the full bananas M package. So with knowing these issues, which is the bike to own? Well, I see 2 different buyers for the S1000RR. Buyer number 1 is the blue and white M Sport hat wearing, money burning fastboy who needs the absolute bleeding edge of performance and doesn't really care about price. This guy won't be satisfied with anything but the best, and you've probably already traded in last year's old and busted bike for the 2020 model because the cam timing changed an eighth or a tenth of a second and it makes 0.01% more horsepower. The last thing on his mind is how the bike feels to ride because it's a work of art and he can ride it. And the other guy is a more casual BMW or general sport bike fan and just wants to go fast and doesn't really care much about how they do it. In this case, you should be looking at some of the older S1000RRs because the only significant change year over year is the price. There's a little cachet in saying that you own one of the super limited first run S1000RRs, but honestly, they're all pretty much the same. But these are just the words of a die-hard Triumph and Ducati and Yamaha simp. Click the link below to check out the Twisted Road, YammieNoob.co, and support what we do.
Oh, didn't see you there. Why don't you watch this video right over here while you're at it, because this one's over actually. There's nothing left to see, but if you click this one right here, you could keep watching your sweet Papa Yam on video, here on the internet, on YouTube. Click the video. Do it.